Before we descend into the shadows of this operation, into the minds of spies and the gilded cages of the Andes, take a moment to subscribe. If you want to uncover the files that governments keep locked away and understand the machinery of intelligence that shapes our world, hit the notification bell. These are the stories of the invisible wars fought in your name. Buenos Aires, 1993. The city breathes a rhythm of tango and exhaust fumes, a sprawling metropolis where Europe meets South America. It is a city of secrets, a place where history's fugitives have long sought refuge in the anonymous crowds. But our focus is not on the city itself. Our focus shifts 500 miles south to the desolate, wind-swept beauty of the Rio Negro province. Here, the landscape is vast, unforgiving, and perfectly suited for a man who wishes to disappear. To the locals, the estate near San Carlos de Bariloche was simply known as La Fortaleza, the fortress. It was a sprawling compound hidden behind high stone walls topped with electrified wire. To the casual observer, it belonged to a reclusive businessman, perhaps a wealthy European seeking privacy. But to the rigorous analysts sitting in a windowless room in Tel Aviv, the man inside was known by a code name, the Architect. His real name was Ibrahim Al-Mazrah, a chemical engineer by training, a financier by trade, and a ghost by necessity. For 2 decades, Al-Mazrah had been the linchpin in a clandestine network supplying rogue regimes with the technology to build non-conventional weapons. He did not build the bombs himself. He moved the money and the components that made them possible. He was the man who knew how to bypass international sanctions, how to route funds through shell companies in Panama and Zurich, and how to make dangerous materials vanish from manifests in Hamburg and reappear in the Middle East. Mossad had hunted him for 6 years. They had missed him in Beirut in 1987. They had arrived 12 hours late to a safe house in Cyprus in 1989. Al-Mazrah was disciplined, paranoid, and wealthy enough to buy the best silence in the world. But every man has a weakness. For some, it is money. For others, ideology. For Al-Mazrah, it was control. Absolute, suffocating control over the only things he claimed to love. His 2 daughters, Yasmin and Noura. The intelligence that reactivated the file came not from a satellite intercept or a turned general, but from a slip of paper passed by a terrified housekeeper to a local priest in Bariloche, which eventually found its way to an Israeli Sayanim, a volunteer helper in Buenos Aires. The message was cryptic, speaking of birds trapped in a golden cage and a father who watched them with the eyes of a jailer. Mossad director Shabtai Shavit authorized Operation Silent Glass with a directive that was unusual for the agency. The primary objective was not immediate neutralization. The objective was extraction. Al-Mazrah held secrets in his head that were vital to the security of the State of Israel. To get those secrets, they couldn't just storm the gates. They had to dismantle his world from the inside. They had to turn his own obsession against him. The monster father had constructed a prison for his children, believing it would keep the world out. He did not realize that he had actually trapped himself in with them, and that his prisoners held the key to his destruction. To understand the hunter, one must understand the prey. Ibrahim Al-Mazrah was not a fanatic in the traditional sense. He drank expensive scotch, wore Italian suits, and quoted French philosophy. He was a product of the Cold War's gray zones, a man who realized early on that power was not about ideology, but about logistics. The red file on Al-Mazrah was thick, detailing his rise from a mid-level bureaucrat in Damascus to a global broker of illicit technology. But the psychological profile attached to the file was what drew the attention of the Caesarea unit, Mossad's elite special operations division. The psychiatrists described a man with malignant narcissism and a pathological need for dominance. In his professional life, this manifested as a micromanager who compartmentalized every aspect of his network. No single person knew the whole picture, except him. In his personal life, it manifested as a domestic tyrant. His wife had passed away under mysterious circumstances in Paris 10 years prior. Officially, a heart condition, though the file noted unexplained bruising that the French authorities, under diplomatic pressure, had ignored. Since her passing, his focus had narrowed entirely to Yasmin, now 22, and Noura, 19. To the outside world, He was a protective father shielding his daughters from the dangers of his enemies. He told them they were targets, that the Zionists and the Americans wanted to hurt them to get to him. He spun a narrative of a hostile world where he was their only savior. But the reality inside the walls of the Barlosh estate was a psychological horror story. There were no physical chains, but the constraints were far stronger. The young women were forbidden from using telephones or the internet. Their education was conducted by private tutors who were vetted for silence and dismissed if they asked questions. The windows of their rooms were sealed. Their movements were monitored by cameras in the hallways, the common rooms, and even the garden. Al-Mazrah called it security. Mossad analysts called it a high-security incarceration facility. He had convinced them that the air outside was toxic, that every stranger was an agent sent to harm them. He had weaponized their love and fear, turning them into extensions of his own ego. This psychological profile was the wedge Mossad needed. A man who demands total control is terrified of chaos. A man who isolates his family creates a vacuum. If an operative could enter that vacuum, if they could offer a glimpse of a different reality to the daughters, the entire structure of Al-Mazrah's life would collapse. He believed his fortress was impenetrable because of its walls and guards. He forgot that the foundation was built on lies told to two young women who were beginning to realize that their protector was their captor. The surveillance team arrived in Patagonia in the dead of winter. It was August 1993. The team consisted of 4 operatives from the Cachet unit, specialists in surveillance and break-ins. They rented a dilapidated farmhouse 3 miles from Al-Mazrah's estate, posing as geologists surveying the region for mineral deposits, a common enough sight in the Andes to avoid suspicion. The conditions were brutal. Freezing winds swept down from the mountains, carrying dust and ice. The operatives spent days lying motionless in camouflaged hides, observing the estate through high-powered optics. They documented the guard rotations, the delivery schedules, and the perimeter defenses. Al-Mazrah had hired former Argentine military police as his security detail. These were men accustomed to violence, remnants of the junta era, who asked no questions as long as the pay was in US dollars. They patrolled the perimeter with Dobermans and carried automatic weapons. The walls were 12 feet high, topped with motion sensors. But it was the internal dynamics that the watchers focused on. Through the long-range lenses, they caught glimpses of the daughters. Yasmin and Noura would walk in the inner courtyard for exactly 1 hour each day, always at 2 p.m., always accompanied by their father or his chief of security, a towering man named Vargas. The operatives noted the body language. The girls walked with their heads down, never looking at the horizon, never speaking to each other when the father was near. They looked less like the heiresses of a wealthy financier and more like inmates in an exercise yard. "He counts their steps," one of the watchers whispered into his recorder one afternoon. "I swear he's counting their steps." Al-Mazrah would pace beside them, gesturing, lecturing. Occasionally he would stop and check their attire, adjusting a scarf or buttoning a coat with a possessiveness that made the hardened Mossad agents uncomfortable. There was no affection in these gestures, only ownership. Electronic surveillance was difficult. Al-Mazrah used high-grade encryption for his communications, and the estate was swept daily for bugs. But the Keshet team managed to tap into the local landline grid miles down the road. They couldn't hear the conversations inside the house. Al-Mazrah used satellite phones for business, but they could monitor the logistical calls, food orders, maintenance requests, the mundane traffic of running a household. It was through this tap that they identified a vulnerability. The golden cage required maintenance. It needed food, fuel, and cleaning. And while the guards were loyal mercenaries, the domestic staff were locals. They were vetted, yes, but they were not soldiers. They were the invisible gears of the machine, and intelligence agencies know that it is often the invisible people who see everything. A plan began to form in Tel Aviv. A direct assault was out of the question. Al-Mazrah would use the girls as human shields or, worse, eliminate them to prevent their capture. The approach had to be soft. They needed a Trojan horse. Enter Daniela. Her real name is classified, buried deep in the archives of the Mossad. We will call her by her cover name. Daniela was a Katza, a case officer of exceptional talent. She was fluent in Spanish with a Rio Platense accent, cultivated during years of operation in South America. She was trained in psychology, combat, and the art of befriending strangers. Her legend was carefully constructed. She was an artist, a painter specializing in landscapes, who had moved to Bariloche to escape the noise of the city and capture the light of the Andes. She rented a cottage near the town center, frequented the local markets, and slowly wove herself into the fabric of the community. She did not approach the estate directly. That would have triggered alarms. Instead, she targeted the periphery. The surveillance team had identified the estate's housekeeper, a woman named Elena, who visited the local market every Thursday to buy fresh produce that the delivery trucks didn't provide. Elena was a woman in her 50s, tired, worn down by the demanding nature of her employer. Daniela began to frequent the same stalls. She didn't make contact immediately. She waited. Week 1, a shared nod over the price of tomatoes. Week 2, a brief comment about the weather. Week 3, a chance encounter at a cafe where Elena was resting her feet. Daniela was charming, warm, and ostensibly lonely. She complained about the difficulty of finding good light for her paintings. Elena, needing an outlet to vent, began to complain about her difficult boss, the man on the hill who treated dust like a personal insult. "He is a ghost," Elena whispered over coffee, weeks into the cultivation. "He scares me. Not because he shouts. He never shouts. But he looks at you like you are a thing, and those poor girls." Daniela leaned in, her eyes wide with feigned curiosity. "Girls? I thought he lived alone." "2 daughters," Elena said, crossing herself. "Beautiful as dolls, but sad. They never leave. They never laugh. He tells them the world is on fire, so they must stay inside where it is safe." The hook was set. Daniela expressed sympathy, painting herself as a free spirit who couldn't imagine such a life. She suggested gently that perhaps she could help. "I have books," Daniela said. "Art books. Beautiful pictures of Europe, of museums. Maybe they would like to see them. You could take one in your bag. Just a small kindness." It was a risky move. If Almazra found the book, Elena would be fired, or worse. But Elena, driven by a mix of pity for the girls and quiet rebellion against the tyrant she served, agreed. The book was a large volume on French Impressionism. Hidden within the spine was not a microphone or a camera, that was too dangerous, but a note. A simple, handwritten note on a piece of sketching paper. "Beauty exists outside the walls. You are not alone." It was a message designed to fracture the isolation. It was the first crack in the fortress. The reaction was slow. Weeks passed. Daniela continued to meet Elena, never pushing, always listening. The tension in Tel Aviv was palpable. The window of opportunity was narrowing. Intelligence indicated Al-Mazrah was preparing for a major transaction, potentially involving the sale of centrifuge schematics to a North African regime. If he moved, the operation would fail. Then, a breakthrough. Elena returned the book. Her hands were shaking as she handed it back to Daniela in the bustling market square. "The eldest, Yasmin, she found it," Elena whispered. "She hid it under her mattress. She read it every night. She gave me this." Elena slipped a folded piece of paper into Daniela's hand. Later, in the safety of her cottage with the curtains drawn, Daniela unfolded the note. The handwriting was elegant but jagged, as if written in haste and fear. "Who are you? He says there is nothing outside but war. He says we are the last safe people. Is it true?" Daniela felt a chill. The indoctrination was deep. Al-Mazrah had created a cult of one. He was the Messiah, the protector, and the warden. To extract them, Daniela couldn't just offer escape. She had to deprogram them remotely. She had to break the father's monopoly on truth. Using Elena as a courier was dangerous, so the method had to evolve. The Keshet team facilitated a technical solution. They smuggled a highly advanced miniature shortwave radio receiver into the bottom of a basket of laundry detergent that Elena carried in. It looked like a spare battery pack for a household appliance. The instructions were simple. Turn it on at midnight. Listen on frequency 140.22. Use the earpiece. For 3 nights, there was silence. The operatives in the farmhouse monitored the frequency, waiting. The static of the airwaves hissed through their speakers. On the 4th night, a series of clicks, 1 long, 2 short. The signal. Yasmin was listening. Daniela took the microphone. She didn't speak like a spy. She spoke like a friend. She spoke of the world, not the world of war Al-Mazrah described, but a world of music, of science, of freedom. She verified details about their lives that only someone watching closely would know, proving she was real. "Your father loves you," Daniela said softly into the mic. "But his love has become a cage." "He is lying to you, Yasmin. The war he speaks of ended years ago. The people outside are not hunting you. He is hiding you because he is afraid of losing his possessions. And that is what you are to him. Possessions." It was a psychological siege. Night after night, Daniela chipped away at the father's narrative. She told them about their mother, not the fragile woman who died of a weak heart, but the vibrant, intelligent woman who had tried to leave him before she died. Mossad analysts had dug up letters, photos, and journals from the mother's time in Paris. Daniela read passages to the daughters. The effect was devastating. The girls realized their memory of their mother had been sanitized by their father. The realization that he had lied about her was the catalyst. Yasmin's voice, tentative and terrified, finally came back over the frequency a week later. She had found a way to transmit using an old radio set in the attic, modified according to Daniela's instructions. "We want to leave," she whispered. "But the doors, the electronic locks, only he has the codes, and Vargas watches everything." The layout of the house was a puzzle that needed solving. Through Yasmin's whispered descriptions, the Mossad team built a virtual model of the interior. The girls' rooms were on the second floor, the windows reinforced with polycarbonate. The main hallway was monitored by a camera with a 180-degree sweep. The electronic locks were high-end Swiss systems, biometrically coded to Al-Mazrah's fingerprints. However, every system has a redundancy. Yasmin revealed that in the event of a fire, the system was designed to default to open for safety regulations, a quirk of the European system Al-Mazrah had installed. But triggering the fire alarm would alert the guards instantly. They would be swarmed before they could reach the perimeter. The team needed a distraction, a massive one. Meanwhile, the psychological pressure on Al-Mazrah was increased. Mossad's psychological warfare unit began a subtle campaign to destabilize him. They hacked into his satellite phone, introducing static and dropped calls during critical business negotiations. They manipulated his bank accounts, freezing small amounts of funds for compliance checks, making him paranoid that his network was being compromised by rivals. The monster father began to unravel. He became erratic. He fired 2 guards for sleeping on duty. They hadn't been. He doubled the perimeter patrols. But crucially, his focus shifted outward, toward the imaginary enemies he believed were circling the walls. He spent more time in his soundproof office, frantically moving money and checking contacts. He spent less time watching the girls. This was the opening. The extraction date was set for the night of the new moon. Operation Silent Glass was shifting from surveillance to action. But then, a complication. Noura, the younger daughter, fell ill. It wasn't a feigned illness. The stress had induced a severe panic attack and fever. Al-Mazrah summoned a doctor, not a local, but a trusted associate flown in from Buenos Aires. This doctor remained in the house. He slept in the guest room next to the girls. The extraction plan, which relied on the girls sneaking out of their rooms at 3 a.m., was compromised. With the doctor present, any movement would be detected. The team commander in Tel Aviv considered aborting. "The risk is too high," the message read. "If they are caught, he will move them to a location we cannot track." Daniela argued ferociously. "If we leave them now, he will break them completely. Yasmin is ready. If we delay, she will lose her nerve. We have to go tonight." The decision was made. They would not abort. They would improvise. The plan required a precise sequence of events. First, the neutralization of the external sensors. The Keshet team deployed a localized electromagnetic jammer, a prototype device designed to blind the motion sensors on the south wall without triggering a hard alarm. It would create a ghost signal, looking like a malfunction rather than an intrusion. Second, the internal distraction. Daniela instructed Elena, who was now fully aware she was aiding an escape, to leave a specific window in the kitchen unlatched. It was a small breach, but enough. At 02 hours, Under the cover of a howling Patagonian wind, two Mossad operatives dressed in black tactical gear scaled the south wall. They moved like smoke, bypassing the Dobermans by using an ultrasonic emitter that kept the dogs confused and silent. They reached the kitchen window. Inside, the house was silent as a tomb. They moved to the basement where the main circuit breaker was located. The plan was not to cut the power. That would trigger the backup generator and the alarms. The plan was to create a brownout, a voltage drop that would cause the smart home system to reboot. During that reboot cycle, the biometric locks would disengage for exactly 90 seconds. Upstairs, Yasmin and Noura were awake, dressed in layers of clothes, shivering in the dark. They had their shoes in their hands. They watched the small LED light on their door lock. Green means locked. No light means open. Down in the basement, the operative connected a shunt to the main breaker. He checked his watch. Mark. He flipped the switch. The hum of the refrigerator died. The hallway lights flickered and dimmed. Upstairs, the LED on the door went dark. "Now," Yasmin whispered. She grabbed her sister's hand. They opened the door. The hinges had been oiled by Elena earlier that day. They stepped into the hallway. The floorboards creaked. To them, it sounded like a gunshot. They froze. From the guest room, the sound of the doctor snoring paused. He shifted in his bed. The girls held their breath, tears streaming down Noura's face. Yasmin squeezed her hand so hard her knuckles turned white. "Move," she mouthed. They crept past the guest room, past their father's office where the faint glow of computer screens illuminated the crack under the door. He was awake. He was in there, 10 feet away, obsessing over his accounts, unaware that his most valuable assets were walking away. They reached the stairs. The reboot cycle was halfway done. 45 seconds left. They reached the kitchen. The operatives were waiting. There were no words. One operative signaled quiet with a finger to his lips. He pointed to the window. They boosted Noura through first, then Yasmin. As Yasmin's feet touched the cold earth of the garden, the house lights flickered back to full strength. The reboot was over. The locks re-engaged with a loud mechanical clack. They were out, but they were still inside the perimeter. "Go," the operative whispered into his comms. The run to the wall was a nightmare. The wind whipped their hair, blinding them. The searchlights swept the grounds in a programmed pattern. The operatives knew the pattern. They guided the girls through the blind spots, moving in bursts. Run, stop, drop, run. They reached the south wall. The jammer was holding, but the guards were restless. A flashlight beam swung toward them from the east tower. "Down!" the operative hissed. They pressed themselves into the mud. The beam passed over them, missing them by inches. The operatives deployed a collapsible ladder. Up, fast. Noura struggled. She was weak from illness. Yasmin pushed her, lifting her sister with a strength she didn't know she possessed. Noura crested the wall and rolled onto the other side. Yasmin followed. As they hit the ground outside the fortress, a dog barked. Not a confused bark, but an alert. The ultrasonic emitter had failed, or the battery had died. "Breach!" a guard shouted from the wall. The silence of the night shattered. Sirens wailed. Floodlights snapped on, turning the night into blinding day. "Vehicle!" the operative screamed into his radio. A nondescript van roared out of the darkness, tires spinning on the gravel. The side door slid open. "Get in!" They threw the girls into the van. The operatives dived in after them. Bullets kicked up dust around the tires. Warning shots, or perhaps the guards were shooting to kill. It didn't matter. The driver, a former rally racer recruited for this specific skill set, slammed the accelerator. The van fishtailed and tore down the dirt road, leaving the fortress of Bariloche fading into the distance. Inside the van, Yasmin and Noura clung to each other, sobbing. Daniela was there. She didn't offer empty platitudes. She handed them blankets and water. "You are safe," she said firmly. "You are free." But the operation wasn't over. Al-Mazrah would not let them go. He would unleash hell to get them back. The extraction from Argentina was a logistical gauntlet. Al-Mazrah had connections with corrupt provincial police. Within an hour, roadblocks were being set up on the main highways leading to the airport. But Mossad had anticipated this. They didn't head to the airport. They headed east, toward the Atlantic coast. The van was ditched in a dense forest, replaced by two separate sedans. The team split up. The decoys took the main road south. The girls, with Daniela and two bodyguards, took the back roads toward a private airfield near Viedma. Al-Mazrah was tracking them. He had activated a tracker hidden in a locket Noura wore, a gift he had given her years ago. He was watching a blip on a screen in his office, his face a mask of cold fury. He deployed a private helicopter with a mercenary team to intercept. "They are heading to Viedma," Al-Mazrah barked into his phone. "Stop them. Do not harm the girls. Eliminate everyone else." Mossad's technical unit picked up the signal emission from the locket. "They are tracking us," the tech officer radioed the car. "The younger one, the necklace." Daniela turned to Noura. "The necklace. Give it to me." Noura clutched it. It was Mom's. "It's not your mother's," Daniela said gently but urgently. "It's his leash. Give it to me." Noura ripped it off. Daniela rolled down the window and hurled it into the passing bed of a cattle truck headed in the opposite direction. On Al-Mazrah's screen, the blip suddenly changed direction, heading west at 60 miles per hour. The mercenary helicopter banked, following the truck. The sedans reached the airfield. A twin-engine plane was waiting, engines running. They boarded. As the wheels left the runway, the sun was just beginning to crest over the Atlantic. Yasmin looked out the window. She saw the land dropping away, the prison of her youth becoming small, insignificant. She took a deep breath. It was the first breath of her life that truly belonged to her. The plane landed in Uruguay, then a transfer to a commercial flight to Europe, and finally, safe arrival in a secure facility near Tel Aviv. But the hunt for the father was only entering its final phase. With the girls gone, Ibrahim Al-Mazrah collapsed, not into grief, but into a rage that consumed his caution. The control he prized above all else had been shattered. He began to make mistakes. He called contacts he shouldn't have called. He threatened partners who demanded silence. He traveled personally to Buenos Aires to scream at the police chief, exposing himself in public. He had become a liability to his own network. The rogue regimes he supplied saw a man who couldn't even control his own house. How could he be trusted with their nuclear secrets? Mossad watched. They didn't need to send a hit team. They just needed to let him destroy himself. But Al-Mazrah had one card left. He prepared to release a dead man's switch, a cache of documents implicating powerful figures in his illegal trade, unless his daughters were returned. This escalated the threat level. He wasn't just a monster father anymore. He was a cornered animal threatening to burn down the forest. Mossad decided to close the file, not with a bullet, but with the law. They leaked the entirety of the red file, the evidence of his illegal weapons trafficking, the money laundering, the specific bank account numbers, to the CIA and Interpol. For years, Israel had hoarded this intel. Now, they used it as a weapon. Chapter 11. The Fall of the Fortress. The end came not with a bang, but with the squeal of tires and the shouting of federal agents. Without the protection of his anonymity, and with his political cover blown by the intelligence leak, the Argentine government could no longer ignore him. Under immense international pressure, they authorized a raid. Al-Mazrah was in his office at the fortress, staring at a picture of his daughters, when the gates were rammed by an armored vehicle. He didn't fight. He sat in his chair, paralyzed by the incomprehension that his world, his perfect, controlled world, had been dismantled by the very people he thought he owned. He was arrested, extradited to France to stand trial for financial crimes and arms trafficking. The monster father was put in a real prison, one with bars he didn't control, guarded by men he couldn't pay. Chapter 12. The New Horizon. Yasmin and Noura never saw him again. They settled in Europe under new identities provided by the agency that rescued them. They went to university. They learned to walk down a street without looking for cameras. They learned that love was not about possession. Years later, a woman sat in a cafe in Paris. She was painting the river. An older woman walked by, Daniela, now retired. They exchanged a look. No words were spoken, just a nod. A shared acknowledgement of a night in Patagonia when the walls came down. The fortress of Bariloche stands empty today, the wind howling through its broken windows, a monument to the futility of trying to imprison the human spirit.